I've always said there are very few women who could coach a men's team, one of which is, in my opinion, Pat Summitt. But Teresa Phillips did do that.
Wow, I would probably say, when you look at your career and look at maybe one of the lowest times and then some of the highest times, that would probably still go down as my lowest time here at Tennessee State. When that circumstance situation happened with Nolan Richardson and the basketball assistant coaches and those kind of things coming into Gentry Center, obviously armed with a threat to his assistant coach, we having to really sit him down, and then of course following right up with the assistant coach who was the interim being suspended.
To step out from behind the desk as an AD and go to courtside, coach them in a couple of practices and take them to Clarksville for a really difficult game, and to coach them well in that game. They lost, but they played better than, frankly, they had played most of the year. That says a lot about Teresa as someone who understands the game, but more importantly, understands leadership.
Leadership sometimes has to just, to me, step out on something that may be unknown. Sometimes, you don't really think of some consequences, and I don't know that there were negative consequences when it became a big deal, but I wanted those young men to feel really safe, and I wanted them to have a mature person in their midst. We only had a very young assistant coach left at that point, and then there were just some controversies going on, so I just wanted to make sure and ensure that that next game went fine, went well, and it did.
It was very intense. Everybody was getting after it because she told everybody, we're not going to tolerate nothing but the best. So we're going to practice, we're going to practice. Of course, she implemented a few things, and she told us that she wasn't going to change the things we were doing because she hadn't really been at practices, but everything we did was going to be given at 100% effort, and that's the only thing she was going to sell.
It wasn't a very good team, frankly, but I remember going to that game, and Dave Luce, coach at Austin Peay, was on the opposite sideline, and there were a couple of times you looked over there, and Luce just sort of had this look on his face like, this isn't the team we saw on tape. They're playing better defensively. I think she threw in a couple of zone traps that threw them off. Teresa's just very talented at whatever she does.
Teresa just is one of those people who's had a phenomenal career, from the time she played at Vanderbilt. Then she moved on and recruited. That's where we got to know each other. We recruited against each other for so many years, and she brought some incredible players into the Vanderbilt system.
Really, my very first year was a club sport, so it wasn't even intercollegiate. So we went from that to actually being intercollegiate, one uniform, no warm-up. Dressed in the PE locker room, drove on vans with the coach and assistant coach driving. So, it's come a long way, baby. I think we only played maybe 16 games, things like that. But I do remember, getting beaten pretty badly by UT maybe my junior year or something like that. So, some of those memories fade when they weren't great memories. By the time I was a senior, we were signing people like Sheila Johansson, who was the top player in the state, just a big time basketball player who we've kind of rekindled our friendship lately, but just a big time player coming out of Mount Juliet High School. We were actually signing probably some of the top players in the state, just in the state now, by the time I graduated. When the major schools decided to buy into women's basketball, I think that they did it at the reasonable, quick pace that it needed to be done at. I really do. It was rather quick, I think. I think we've slowed down, actually, now. It's so fun now to think back on it. It was still some great days. I mean, riding the van doesn't sound very exciting, but, to see how far you've come, our program has come from riding in the van to knowing that they fly and go, pretty much where they want, doing what they want, that their locker room is equitable to the men's. I got to see that as it just, in the infancy stages all the way to now, so that's been very, very fun. When I came back and coached at Vanderbilt as an assistant coach, I really was still a full-time broker in the insurance and annuity and benefits division of Providence, so I kind of hustled 2 jobs at that time, but I had a love of it. I couldn't get it out my craw, just enjoying sports.
She's the epitome of strength. She sets an example when I played for her and she would talk about these things about being strong and being determined and never let things, you could tell that she really believed that. It was not something she was just regurgitating or something that she was just saying. She truly believed that, and she lived that way. And you would see her, she would stand up for her team, and if you were wrong, she would tell you you were dead wrong. Everything was on the surface. You never had to worry about her saying one thing and living another way. She was exactly the way she was all the time. So when you have somebody that believes in what they're telling you, you have no choice but to buy into that and live that way, because that's the way it is.
For a woman to step into an athletic leadership position like athletics director, given some of her predecessors, was a tough sell, but Teresa's able to pull it off. Leading that athletic program out there is one of the biggest challenges I'm aware of in college athletics. It's a different animal, and it's very, very challenging. I think Teresa's pulled it off. Again, it's such a tough balancing act. Financially, it's always a challenge, but she's somehow managed to sort of pull all these parts together and make it work.
You know, it was just out of necessity. Here we had several turnovers of ADs. I had some of the background to do the administrative work, and had actually become an associate AD over academics while I was still coaching. And so it kind of was accidental. I was somewhat pushed into it. I think having my children at that time too helped me buy into going on and doing it.
She has a legacy at Tennessee State for sure. She won the first 2 OVCs for the women, actually the only 2, I believe. She coached great players like Carolyn Aldridge, Connie Swift, Tess, that's in the staff right now. They all played for her and had the respect for her. And to bring positive to that season with her being the first coach to coach the males, I think that helped a lot. And now she's moved on, of course, still the athletic director, and she's done a good job as athletic director at Tennessee State. So I believe she has a great legacy, and she will go down probably in Tennessee State Hall of Fame for things she's done at Tennessee State.
I look back still, that was just a decision that I didn't think very much of. I didn't think it would be made a big deal. And all of a sudden it was a big deal. So, you know, it was just not intended to make history. I think people make history like Katana Starks, who was a coach here at Tennessee State, who actually coached swimming, men's swimming, and men's golf years and years before that. So, you know, those are kind of women who made a difference and made history, not me.